Death brings a unique pain for those left behind, and it's a pain unlike any other, and it's a pain that nobody escapes, not even God himself. You see, the death of John the Baptist impacted on Jesus in the way that death impacts on any of us. Jesus no doubt felt the loss of his cousin and his friend, but he also had the additional sense of having a responsibility for his death, because John the Baptist was murdered because he was preaching about Jesus. And Jesus' plan was obviously to take some time to mourn, to be by himself with the apostles. He no doubt was conscious of not only the death of John the Baptist, but he must also have been considering the lives that the apostles were going to live and their deaths too. And God becoming man in Jesus is something really beyond our comprehension. We can understand the human condition, but we can't begin to understand how being human was for God. Jesus was experiencing all the human emotions and feelings that we have, but also he is God. So what difference does that make? You see, then Jesus could see the full picture as well as the immediate picture. And perhaps the best way that we can have of understanding what that might be like is that experience of knowing that you're suffering and realizing that it is possible for it to be another way. It doesn't have to be the way it is. And this is the pain that is often felt by those who suffer from addiction. There is an awareness that there is another way, but the nature of the addiction makes it very difficult to be free to choose that other way. Jesus, he had the freedom to choose, and he chose us over himself. And in doing this, Jesus experienced fully the suffering that anyone dealing with addiction has. Jesus knows the pain. He experienced it. And when dealing with addiction, it's so important then to go to Jesus. It's important to know that Jesus understands that pain of addiction. He understands the suffering. He knows how the individual can feel about themselves, and he's waiting to comfort anyone who comes to him. He wants to take the suffering of addiction away. The miracle of the loaves and the fish reveal what is possible when we go to Jesus. Jesus can create an abundance in our lives. He can fill our lives. He can fill them in a way that, like the 12 baskets left over, seems impossible from where we're starting. And many times people who suffer from addiction go on to help others. It seems impossible at a moment in time, but it happens. And Jesus often makes this a reality, the abundance of God. And you know, maybe the impossible can be lived too when we're mourning. For us, it's important to mourn the loss of our family and friends, but we also need to recognize what Jesus did when he stepped from the boat. He immediately went to help others. We also cannot allow mourning to become what our lives are all about. We need to acknowledge our loss, our pain, and this can take different periods of time for different people and different relationships. But as Christians, we know that death is not the end. And therefore we can only mourn the immediate loss, because we know that there is no long-term loss. We will all be together, and therefore there really should be no long-term mourning either. And helping others can be a very healthy way to find life after death. And helping others can be a very healthy way to find life after addiction and to truly celebrate the abundance of God. Tonight, Lord, we thank you for the miracles that you work in our lives, and we ask you to help us to recognize the abundance we have as we commit ourselves to you by saying, God, we are yours. Do with us what you will.